Hello and welcome to TechRaven. I'm Nigel and today I'm going to do a quick review and tutorial on Arturia's Bus Exciter 104 plugin. But first I'm going to give you a brief history lesson so you have a little background knowledge on the hardware on which this plugin is based. Arturia's Bus Exciter plugin is based on the legendary Oral Exciter, which was made by Aphex back in the 1970s. Back then, the principle and technology behind the exciter was shrouded in secrecy and you could only rent them. Recording engineers didn't really understand exactly what they did, but they did know that everything sounded clearer, brighter, and more detailed with an overall effect unlike anything that could be achieved using typical EQ methods. So moving forward to the present day, it's become obvious why the Aphex Exciter sounded different to EQ. The EQ method simply boosted frequencies that were already present in the recording, while the Aphex system created new high-frequency harmonics that were musically related to the existing recorded material. It worked by splitting the original signal into two. One part was passed through a high-pass filter, so only the upper, mid and high frequencies remained. Then further processing was carried out to add harmonics to the signal. Finally, a small amount of this processed signal was added back into the original recording by way of a mix or balance control. This created a new, bright top end that was perceived as being a natural part of the recording. The later Type C2 104 model had additional big bottom controls and circuitry that did something similar, only at the bass end of the spectrum, so it will definitely appeal to bass freaks as well. This entire audio process is known as psychoacoustics, a trick designed to fool the human ear into believing something that isn't actually real, but it works, and it works very well. So how does Arturia's plugin version of the Aphex Exciter fare? Well, it's impressive. I personally use Logic Pro, and for the most part I use the stock plugins that Logic came with, as they pretty much do everything that I need. I'm not a plugin whore that buys up every new plugin that comes out, and I certainly don't have hundreds of plugins scattered all over my computer's hard drive. I'm more selective and I rarely buy plugins, and when I do, it's usually something quite special that can genuinely improve my recordings or give them a wow factor, and Arturia's Bus Exciter 104 does both. As for my own mixing and mastering skills, I'm not a top drawer engineer by any stretch, but if I did mastering for a living, the Arturia Bus Exciter would probably find a permanent home on the master stereo output bus. Okay, so let me give you a quick tour and demonstration. Okay, so I've got Logic open here, and I've just composed this little synth pop song that I'm going to be using to demonstrate the Bus Exciter plugin on the master stereo out track as well as on the drum track as well. So let me just play you a few seconds of the song so you can get an idea as to what it's going to sound like with no Bus Exciter plugins at all. Okay, so that should give you an idea as to what that sounds like. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to solo off the drum track first. Now this is Addictive Drums 2, but they are drum samples, so there's plenty of harmonics, ringing and overtones, and I did play it in using a Yamaha multi-12 pad with drumsticks. So if I solo that off, this is how the drum pad is going to sound on its own. Again, no Bus Exciter at this stage. Okay, so let me bring up the Bus Exciter. So this is what it looks like. You can make it bigger or smaller by grabbing on these three lines here to make it as big or as small as you like. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the interface. Again, this isn't going to be a really long video. It's just a quick once over so I can give you an idea as to what it does and whether it's a kind of plugin that you might like. So I'm just going to bring up a picture of the original Aphex 104 because the circuitry that they added to the later models for the bass end of things, they called it Big Bottom, and I believe they actually patented that as well. With the Arturia one, they call it Big Bass for obvious reasons. And on the original hardware version, the mids and upper frequencies were called Aural Exciter. And again, on the Arturia plugin here, they've actually called them Exciter. So fair play to them there. So if I click here, you can see that there's actually some presets already. There's not hundreds of them, thank God, because I don't like scrolling through hundreds of presets anyway. And you can actually just scroll through them by clicking these two triangles to go up and down. And as you can see, each time I scroll through them, all of the settings for big bass, exciter, output, and everything else changes according to what the preset is. If I actually click on the word here, you got some categories for classic EQ, enhancer, exciter, loudness curve, and resonant EQ, or you can just click all presets here to go through them all. And as you can see, there's not too many, which is a good thing in my opinion. So for this example, I'm going to choose the full drum exciter because it happens to sound really good on drums, coincidentally, just so I can use this for demonstration purposes to show you what it actually does. So in Logic, with plugins, you actually can turn them on or off to bypass them here. But with this plugin, you can also click on this bypass down here. So I'm just going to turn it on and off. This is just for the drum track, just so you can hear what it's doing. So this is without. And then this is with. So I'm just going to turn it on and off a few times while it's playing to give you an idea. And then again down here. Okay, so hopefully that gave you an idea as to what it's actually doing. So I'm just going to go through some of these settings here for drive, frequency, and mix across the bottom so you can hear what it's doing. You can do it two ways. You can actually move the mouse over here until you get the two arrows and drag this sideways, or you can actually use the frequency, but I'll demonstrate it both ways. So here goes. That's the drive. And then for the mix, the more you turn the mix up, the more it's actually going to push it through. So if you turn the mix all the way down, essentially you're bypassing the bass section. So let me show you that. So that's the bass section. Now you can solo it so you can hear just what the plugin is doing without basically what it's adding. So let me demonstrate that. Okay, now I'll do a little bit with the exciter end of the spectrum. Again, I will solo just the exciter area. And then over here, you've got the wet mix. So turning it all the way to the left essentially is bypassing the whole plugin. And by cranking it up to maximum, it's just giving you the full effect. So let me just turn that down and demonstrate that. Okay, so hopefully that's given you some ideas to what it does there. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just going to switch over to the entire track. So I'm going to turn off the bus exciter there, and I'm going to unsolo that, and then I'm going to bring up the bus exciter for the entire track. So this is now going to be affecting, let me just close that down a minute so I can show you here. This again is on the stereo output track, so this one here is going to be affecting the entire song. So I've turned off the bus exciter for the drum track, and currently it's off for the whole song. So let me bring this up and play it, and I'm going to go through a few settings here. So again, I'm going to start off with just this default one, and then I'm going to change some of these settings so you can hear what it's doing. So I'm going to turn it on and off so you can hear what it's doing here. Okay, so hopefully that's given you an idea as to what it can do. Now, one little thing that I am going to demonstrate here, I'm just going to actually turn this off, and I'm just going to reset this here, because a lot of YouTubers I've seen doing reviews on this have all said that it doesn't affect the peak output level at all because it's only affecting harmonics, but that's not true. It absolutely does affect peaks totally. But then again, the original hardware one did too. So with the original hardware one, if you basically drove it high enough and you pushed it enough, it would also affect the peak levels. So I'm just going to demonstrate what this is actually doing to the peak levels. Again, this is with the drive about halfway, and the mix is pushed just a tad over halfway. Here, the mix for the exciter is just a little bit under, and then the wet mix, I've got this on 70%. So it's been driven a little bit, but not massively, but there's still enough drive in here to actually affect the stereo output. So if I just, let me just bring this down and... Yeah, okay, so as you can see at the moment, we're on about 4.8. You can see here, minus 4.6, sorry. To around about minus 4.3. So if you keep your eye on this while I turn this on, you'll suddenly see this peak change quite drastically. So here we go. So as you can see, it's basically shot to minus 1.2. If I just reset that and play it again without. So you can see that it definitely does affect the peak levels, so you might want to be aware of that, but you can actually change that here. So yes, if you find that it's affecting your peak levels, and if you drive it and push it hard enough, it will. But not to worry, because you've got a level controller here where you can actually just bring it back a little bit to get your levels back while still retaining all that extra weighty bass and all the exciter stuff that's going on in the upper frequencies as well. Okay, so finally I'm just going to demonstrate the wet only section here. You'll hear immediately what this does. Okay, so there it is. That's my quick overview of the Arturia Bus Exciter 104. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to go and check it out. But for me, I think it's a really good plugin, and I'm definitely going to be using it not only on individual tracks and sidechains, but definitely on the master stereo output bus. Maybe not quite as exaggerated as this. I'll just basically pull it back and make it more subtle in certain instances. But I think it's a brilliant plugin, and it certainly replicates what the original Aphex 104 exciter from the 70s did, that's for sure. So hope you enjoyed this little tutorial, and if you did, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. My name is Nigel Cooper. You've been watching Tech Raven. See you again in the next one.